On our 5th anniversary, my father-in-law humiliated me in front of 550 elite guests. He called me a charity case with a worthless mechanic father. When I finally defended myself and exposed his massive tax fraud, my husband slapped me across the face while the entire ballroom watched. I did not cry. I simply wiped the blood from my lip and made one phone call to the man they believed was just a grease-covered mechanic. "Dad," I said, "come pick me up and destroy them." Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to teach arrogant people a lesson they never forgot. My name is Stella, and I am 33 years old. For the last 5 years, I had been married to Harrison, the vice president of a powerful commercial real estate company in New York City. From the outside, my life looked like a perfect modern fairy tale. I was the ordinary woman who married into extraordinary wealth. But behind the heavy oak doors of their Manhattan penthouse, I was treated like an outsider. My father-in-law, Winston, was a ruthless real estate mogul who expected complete obedience from everyone around him. He hated me from the moment Harrison introduced me to the family. He hated my modest clothes. He hated the used sedan I drove. Most of all, he hated my father, Alexander, a man who preferred stained flannel shirts and spending his time repairing old truck engines. Winston believed we were poor, uneducated people looking for financial support. What they did not know was that my father was actually a private equity titan on Wall Street. They had no idea he controlled billions of dollars in assets while choosing to live quietly and far away from the shallow world of high society. And they certainly did not know that I was the sole heir to a massive trust fund. I hid my wealth because I wanted a marriage based on genuine love, not money or status. I wanted to be appreciated for my intelligence and character. Instead, I spent 5 years enduring emotional abuse from a family of narcissists who judged people entirely by designer brands and country club memberships. Tonight was the breaking point. We were seated at the head table inside the grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton. More than 550 influential investors, politicians, and social elites filled the room beneath sparkling crystal chandeliers. Waiters in white tuxedos poured expensive champagne into crystal glasses. The event celebrated both the 30th anniversary of Winston's company and my 5th wedding anniversary with Harrison. I sat quietly in my simple black evening gown, staring at the folded linen napkin in my lap. The atmosphere felt heavy and suffocating. Harrison sat beside me, completely ignoring my existence. He laughed loudly at a cruel joke made by his younger sister, Caroline. Caroline wore a diamond necklace worth more than most people earned in 10 years. I knew she purchased it using company money that should have gone toward employee health care benefits. I knew because I was the person who corrected the accounting discrepancy. For the last 5 years, I had secretly worked as a senior financial risk analyst through a third-party consulting company. Winston and Harrison had no idea that the analyst they hired to repair their financial disasters was actually the daughter-in-law they constantly mocked. I worked 80-hour weeks fixing illegal zoning violations. I restructured toxic debt so they could continue funding their luxurious lifestyle. They treated me like garbage at family dinners, never realizing that my financial strategies were the only reason they were not already under federal investigation for tax fraud. The sound of a silver spoon striking a crystal glass echoed through the ballroom. Conversation stopped instantly. Winston stood at the podium like a king addressing loyal followers. At 62 years old, he radiated arrogant authority. He adjusted his expensive silk tie and leaned toward the microphone. "Thank you all for joining us tonight," Winston announced, his voice booming across the ballroom. "Tonight we celebrate the incredible success of our real estate empire, but we also celebrate my son Harrison. 5 years ago, Harrison performed a remarkable act of charity." My stomach tightened immediately. I already knew where this speech was going. Winston looked directly at me with a cruel smile. "Harrison married Stella," he continued, his tone dripping with condescension, "a young woman buried under student loans. A girl raised by a mechanic who probably spends his days covered in cheap motor oil. Harrison welcomed her into a world of privilege and luxury she never could have imagined. Let us applaud my son for his generosity toward the less fortunate." Polite but cruel laughter spread through the ballroom. Caroline laughed loudly from across the table. Harrison puffed out his chest proudly as if he had rescued someone from the streets. He never defended me. He never even looked at me. He simply enjoyed the praise. I sat frozen in my chair. The humiliation burned my cheeks, but the anger inside me burned far hotter. I looked around the room at hundreds of wealthy faces staring at me with amusement and pity. I remembered the nights I cried alone in the bathroom while Harrison mocked my career. I remembered the panic attacks I suffered while untangling Winston's fraudulent financial records just to keep the company alive. I had sacrificed my peace to protect people who viewed me as a joke. Winston raised his champagne glass. "To our flawless business instincts," he announced proudly. "To the untouchable legacy of our family name." That was the exact moment the obedient wife disappeared. That was the moment I decided to destroy their fake empire. I pushed my chair back. The heavy wooden legs scraped loudly against the marble floor, cutting through the applause. I stood slowly and lifted my champagne glass. Every eye in the room turned toward me. Harrison grabbed my wrist under the table, his fingers digging painfully into my skin. "Sit down and shut up," he hissed through clenched teeth. "You're embarrassing me." I pulled my arm away from his grip. Then I looked directly at Winston on the stage. My voice was calm, steady, and fearless as it carried across the silent ballroom. "Flawless business instincts, Winston?" I asked clearly. His confident smile vanished instantly. "What are you doing?" He barked into the microphone. "Sit down immediately." I stepped away from the table so everyone could see me. "Is that what you call the $12 million tax discrepancy I cleaned up for you last month?" I asked loudly enough for the investors in the front row to hear every word. "Or the offshore shell accounts you used to hide your losses from the very people sitting in this room tonight?" The ballroom exploded into chaos. Investors immediately began whispering to one another. Some pulled out their phones to contact advisors. Caroline dropped her wine glass in shock. Winston stood frozen at the podium. He recognized every financial figure I mentioned, and suddenly, he understood that the anonymous consultant who knew all of his secrets was the same daughter-in-law he had publicly humiliated moments earlier. Silence followed my words. Winston gripped the podium so tightly his knuckles turned white. The color drained from his face. The investors at the front tables understood the seriousness immediately. Expensive suits shifted nervously. Wives exchanged anxious glances. The perfect image of Winston's untouchable empire was collapsing in real time. Then Harrison realized what was happening. His inheritance, reputation, and fragile ego were being destroyed by the woman he believed was weak and dependent. His face twisted with rage. He shoved his chair backward so hard it crashed against the marble floor and stormed toward me. I stood still. For 5 years, I had made myself smaller to protect his ego. I was finished doing that. Harrison grabbed my shoulder hard enough to bruise and spun me toward him. Then he forced a fake smile toward the investors. "Please excuse my wife," he announced desperately. "She's been struggling with serious mental health issues lately. She's having a breakdown and doesn't understand what she's saying." I pulled myself free from his grip. "I am not hysterical, Harrison," I replied calmly. "I am the anonymous senior analyst your father hired to save this company. I have every financial document stored on a secure server. I have the emails. I have the forged signature records. Federal investigators will find them very interesting." That sentence destroyed whatever control Harrison still had. The realization that his submissive wife was actually the financial expert who had secretly kept his family afloat pushed him over the edge. He lost control completely. Harrison raised his hand and struck me across the face with brutal force. The sound echoed through the ballroom. The impact knocked me off balance and sent me crashing onto the marble floor. Pain shot through my legs, but the sting on my cheek hurt far worse. The entire ballroom fell silent. The musicians stopped playing. The waiters froze in place. For one brief second, I thought someone might step forward to help me. I thought surely someone in this room full of wealthy, educated people would condemn a man for hitting his wife in public. I was wrong. Instead of outrage, whispers filled the room. People blamed me. A woman nearby whispered that I deserved it for humiliating my husband. An older man muttered that working-class women did not belong in polite society. Caroline crossed her arms with disgust. They were not horrified by his violence. They were horrified by my refusal to stay obedient. Harrison stood over me, breathing heavily. "You are insane," he hissed. "How dare you bite the hand that feeds you? Without this family and our money, you would be nothing. You and your pathetic mechanic father would be homeless right now. You are a charity case, Stella, a poor mechanic's daughter who got lucky." I knelt silently on the marble floor. Then I tasted blood. I touched the corner of my mouth and saw red on my fingertips. He had split my lip open. I looked up at the man I had promised to spend my life with. For years, I had tried to believe he was simply influenced by his toxic father. But standing there watching him enjoy his own cruelty, I felt absolutely nothing anymore. The love was gone. The loyalty was gone. I did not cry. I wiped the blood from my mouth with the back of my hand and slowly stood up. Then I looked Harrison directly in the eyes. There was no fear left in me. I reached into my evening clutch and pulled out my phone. It was time to introduce Harrison and his family to the grease monkey they mocked for years. It was time to show them what happens when you attack the daughter of a Wall Street titan. I unlocked my phone and pressed the only contact I needed: Dad. I raised the phone to my ear. I said calmly, "Come pick me up and get ready to pull the net." I ended the call before he could respond. He already understood exactly what I meant. We had prepared for this possibility for months. Harrison burst into mocking laughter. "Did everyone hear that?" he shouted to the crowd. "She called her daddy. What's he gonna do, Stella? Drive his rusty pickup truck to the Ritz-Carlton? Fix my transmission in the valet lane?" A few business partners laughed along with him. But before Harrison could continue, I felt a strong hand gently touch my elbow. I turned and saw Donovan. Donovan was Caroline's husband, a brilliant cardiothoracic surgeon and the only person in that ballroom with genuine integrity. He stepped directly between Harrison and me. "Are you okay, Stella?" he asked quietly, examining my split lip with concern. Harrison's face darkened immediately. "Back off, Donovan," he snapped. "This is family business. Stay out of it, you freeloader." Donovan did not move. He stood calmly in front of Harrison with effortless authority. The family's prejudice toward Donovan had always been obvious. Publicly, they praised him to appear progressive. Privately, they mocked his working-class Detroit background. They hated the fact that he was self-made and more accomplished than any of them. "Freeloader?" Donovan repeated quietly. His voice cut through the ballroom like a blade. "Let's make something very clear, Harrison. The only reason your sister can afford that diamond necklace tonight is because I work 60-hour shifts in an operating room. My salary pays the mortgage on the mansion she pretends she owns. My money funds her shopping habits and luxury cars because her trust fund disappeared years ago." The ballroom gasped. "Do not speak to me about freeloading while your entire family survives on Stella's intelligence and my hard work." Caroline covered her face in humiliation. Even Winston looked physically ill. Donovan understood exactly what I had endured because he lived inside the same toxic family. I gave him a grateful nod. "Thank you, Donovan," I said softly. "But I can leave on my own. Don't let them drag you down with them." Then I turned my back on Harrison, Winston, Caroline, and every judgmental person in that ballroom. I walked toward the exit with my head held high. No one stopped me. Outside, the cool New York air hit my face as valet attendants rushed around the entrance. Behind me, Harrison followed into the lobby. "Go ahead and run," he yelled. "You'll come crawling back tomorrow begging for money. Nobody wants a damaged liability like you." I ignored him completely. Less than 2 minutes later, the deep rumble of a powerful engine echoed down the street. A midnight black armored Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled smoothly to the curb. 4 security men in dark, tailored suits stepped out with military precision and formed a protective perimeter around me. One of them opened the rear door respectfully. I entered the vehicle without looking back. Through the tinted glass, I could see Harrison standing frozen on the hotel steps. Even then, his ego refused to accept reality. He convinced himself I had simply hired an expensive car service using his company card. He still had no idea that the car belonged to the mechanic he publicly insulted. And he had no idea the trap was already closing around him. Harrison's face lost all color as the financial reality of my words finally reached him. He opened his mouth to yell another threat, but the heavy silver doors of the private elevator closed. cutting off his voice completely. I stood inside the quiet hum of the rising elevator, heading straight to my desk to collect the final piece needed to destroy their corporate empire. I stepped out of the elevator and moved quickly through the silent executive hallway. No one dared stop me or even meet my eyes. I reached my old cubicle, the isolated corner they intentionally gave me to keep me away from their prestigious board members. I knelt on the carpet and slid my hand beneath the heavy wooden desk. My fingers touched a small strip of industrial tape. I tore it away in one sharp motion, revealing the encrypted flash drive I had hidden there months earlier. That small metal drive contained the complete unedited transaction records. It held the exact routing numbers for the offshore accounts Winston used to hide his collapsing investments. It documented every act of corporate fraud Harrison committed to support his extravagant lifestyle and his affairs. I slipped the drive into my coat pocket. My purpose in that toxic building was officially finished. I avoided the main lobby exit entirely. I had no interest in seeing Harrison or his latest mistress again. Instead, I used my master key card to enter the secured maintenance corridor. The concrete hallway connected directly to the neighboring commercial tower, a property secretly owned by my family's trust, a fact that would have devastated Winston if he had known. I took the freight elevator directly to the rooftop. The freezing winter wind whipped my hair around my face as the steel doors opened. A sleek matte black helicopter waited on the private helipad, its rotors slicing through the cold air. The pilot gave me a professional nod as I climbed inside and fastened myself into the leather seat. Seconds later, we lifted into the sky, leaving my husband's collapsing empire far below. I looked out the window as the Manhattan skyline stretched beneath us like a giant chessboard. The adrenaline from the confrontation faded, replaced by cold focus. I was no longer the obedient wife trying to save a broken man. I was returning to where I truly belonged. We flew directly toward the financial center of the world, Wall Street. The helicopter tilted right and descended toward a massive glass skyscraper, dominating the southern edge of the island. The tower housed my father's private equity firm. It was a ruthless company known for acquiring failing businesses, stripping their assets, restructuring management, and selling the remains for enormous profit. The helicopter landed smoothly on the rooftop. Two armed security contractors escorted me from the helipad to the private executive elevator. The doors shut, and we descended quickly to the penthouse level. I entered the enormous executive suite. The entire far wall was built from floor-to-ceiling glass, offering a clear view of the Statue of Liberty and the harbor. Behind a massive desk carved from a single slab of petrified wood sat my father, Alexander. If Harrison or Winston had walked into the room at that moment, their minds would have completely shut down. My father was known across the financial world as one of the most feared men in private equity. He controlled hundreds of billions in global assets. He possessed enough financial influence to destabilize entire nations if he chose. Yet at that moment, he wore faded gray sweatpants, an old plaid flannel shirt, and worn brown work boots. He casually ate a greasy double cheeseburger from a street vendor while reviewing heavily redacted corporate takeover files stacked beside the wrapper. It was the exact outfit he had worn 5 years earlier when he helped me move into my first apartment. It was also the first day Harrison and Winston met him. Because my father had grease on his hands from checking my car engine and dressed in inexpensive clothes, my arrogant in-laws instantly assumed he was nothing more than a mechanic. Their obsession with status blinded them so completely that they never bothered to investigate the father of the woman marrying into their family. If they had spent even 5 minutes researching him, they would have discovered that the mechanic they mocked could have purchased their entire real estate portfolio using spare change. My father swallowed another bite of burger and wiped his hands carefully with a paper napkin. He looked up at me warmly, smiling, until his eyes landed on the left side of my face. The red mark from Harrison's slap had darkened into a deep purple bruise along my cheekbone. The atmosphere inside the office changed instantly. The air itself felt heavier. My father did not yell. He did not throw anything or curse loudly. Truly dangerous men never need to raise their voices. He simply leaned back in his leather chair and stared at the evidence of my husband's violence. Behind his cold eyes, calculations were already forming. He was planning their financial destruction down to the final cent. Slowly, he opened his desk drawer and removed a thick confidential dossier. He dropped it onto the desk with a heavy thud. Across the cover, bold red letters read, "Debt Acquisition Protocol." He looked at me with eyes colder than ice. "I warned you not to involve yourself with those newly rich snobs," my father said quietly, his voice carrying absolute authority. "For the handprint on your face, they will pay with their entire empire." I removed the encrypted flash drive from my pocket and placed it at the center of his desk. "This is the final blow," I told him. "Every altered ledger, every hidden account, every desperate financial move they made over the last 5 years is on this drive." Alexander wiped the remaining grease from his hands and inserted the drive into his secure terminal. The wall-sized monitors flickered to life. Rows of financial data illuminated the dim office in cold blue light. Together, we examined the digital autopsy of my father-in-law's empire. It was worse than I had realized from the inside. Winston projected the image of untouchable wealth to Manhattan's elite, but the foundation of his empire was built on lies and collapsing debt. Red numbers flooded the screens. At the bottom of the master spreadsheet sat the total figure like a ticking bomb: $300 million. That was the amount of leveraged debt hanging over their heads, waiting to crush them. I pointed toward a series of transactions routed through offshore shell companies. "That is Harrison's contribution to the family business," I explained calmly. While Winston attended charity galas and golf tournaments, Harrison imagined himself as a visionary developer. He poured hundreds of millions into commercial projects that never even broke ground. Empty lots in prime locations where permits had expired years earlier. He paid fraudulent contractors who disappeared with the money. Instead of accepting their losses, they borrowed even more through high-interest loans to cover the missing funds. They tried to build a skyscraper on top of terrible decisions. Alexander let out a harsh, low laugh. His eyes scanned the rows of numbers as he processed the stupidity of the men who had touched his daughter. He checked the loan maturity dates carefully. The primary loans carried brutal balloon payments, and the final deadline was less than 72 hours away. "Winston has been begging every major bank in the city for a bridge loan," yes, Alexander said while studying the screens. "My associates say he's practically on his knees looking for a financial savior." He leaned closer to the monitor. "He knows that if he defaults by Friday, the banks will seize everything. Corporate headquarters, residential properties, his penthouse, all of it." I crossed my arms and watched the disaster unfold across the screens. Winston's anniversary gala had never been about celebration. It was a desperate attempt to project stability to investors. He needed the financial world to believe his company was healthy so he could secure a bailout. What he did not realize was that the only organization capable of purchasing a $300 million toxic debt portfolio was sitting inside this room. Alexander turned his chair toward me. His eyes sharpened with predatory focus. "The banks holding these loans are terrified," he said. "They know Winston is collapsing. If we move quickly, we can purchase the debt for pennies on the dollar." He smiled faintly. "They will hand us the paperwork willingly just to remove this disaster from their books." I stared at the flashing numbers. I remembered Harrison slapping me in front of hundreds of people. I remembered him mocking me in the lobby beside his mistress. I remembered Winston standing on stage insulting my father and reducing my existence to charity. Their entire identity depended on the illusion of power. It was time to show them what real power looked like. "Do it," I said without hesitation. "Buy every loan. I want our firm controlling their entire debt portfolio before the end of the business day. I want to own the ground beneath their feet." Alexander smiled proudly. He picked up the secure red phone connected directly to the senior trading floor below. He issued a rapid series of instructions to his elite acquisition team. His orders were absolute. He approved the immediate purchase of the entire $300 million debt package, demanding total speed and secrecy. Within 45 minutes, the deal was complete. The nervous banking executives sold the toxic debt to our firm with visible relief, surrendering all administrative control. The contracts were finalized. The trap was sealed. I stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city below. The transfer was officially complete. The banks no longer controlled Winston's empire. From that moment forward, the largest creditor with complete authority over their future was me. The private equity titan who had acquired their enormous debt portfolio had arrived. He had instructed his public relations team to position photographers discreetly behind the velvet ropes, ready to capture what he considered a historic handshake. Winston wanted the financial media to record his triumphant return. He expected the front page of every business magazine to feature his smiling face beside the billionaire investor who appeared ready to validate his entire empire. "Everyone, stay sharp," Winston barked, clapping his hands to gain control of the lobby. "The motorcade will be here in exactly 2 minutes. When the chairman walks through those doors, I expect perfection. We need to remind them why our brand dominates commercial real estate. Harrison, fix your jacket. Caroline, stop looking at your phone and stand up straight. This is the moment our legacy is secured for the next century." A deep vibration from high-performance engines rolled through the thick glass walls of the corporate lobby. A wave of anticipation swept across the gathered board members. Outside on the busy Manhattan street, traffic nearly came to a halt as 3 sleek vehicles pulled smoothly to the curb. The convoy consisted of immaculate midnight black Maybach sedans, perfectly synchronized beneath the morning sunlight. The lead vehicle stopped directly at the edge of the red carpet. The armored fleet projected an overwhelming image of limitless wealth. Winston and Harrison practically pushed each other aside as they hurried through the revolving doors. They rushed down the steps and stopped at the curb, slightly out of breath from their eagerness. Standing side by side, they adjusted their silk ties and forced exaggerated smiles across their faces. They were fully prepared to flatter the billionaire whose decision would determine their financial future. The reinforced door of the lead Maybach opened with a quiet mechanical hiss. 2 large private security contractors stepped out first, scanning the surroundings carefully before taking position beside the vehicle. Winston and Harrison stood frozen in anticipation, their smiles stretched tightly across their faces. They were ready to praise whoever emerged from the car. A polished leather shoe touched the pavement, followed by the commanding figure of the billionaire investor himself. Alexander stepped into the morning light, and the strength of his presence immediately silenced the busy Manhattan street around him. He looked every bit the image of elite corporate power. The grease-stained flannel shirt and worn work boots from 5 years earlier were gone. Now he wore a perfectly tailored charcoal gray Armani suit that rested sharply across his broad shoulders. A crisp white dress shirt contrasted against a midnight blue silk tie. A platinum Patek Philippe watch rested subtly on his wrist, signaling a level of wealth beyond anything Winston and Harrison had imagined. His silver hair was flawlessly styled, and his posture carried the confidence forged through years on Wall Street. Winston shoved Harrison aside in his rush to greet him first. Extending both hands eagerly, he lowered his head in a desperate display of submission. "Welcome to our headquarters," Winston exclaimed, his voice trembling with excitement. "I'm Winston, founder of this enterprise, and this is my son, Harrison. We are deeply honored to have you here today. Words cannot express our gratitude for your visionary investment in our family legacy." Alexander did not smile. He stared at Winston's outstretched hands for several long seconds before finally offering a brief, crushing handshake. Then his sharp gaze shifted toward Harrison. The irony of the moment was overwhelming. The 2 men now bowing before him had spent years mocking and humiliating him. Yet because of their deep class prejudice and inability to value working class people, they failed to recognize him entirely. All they saw was the Armani suit, the Maybach convoy, and the $300 million lifeline he represented. The mechanic they once despised had disappeared beneath their greed. "Lead the way," Alexander ordered, his deep voice leaving no room for argument. Winston and Harrison hurried ahead of him up the red carpet. As they entered the grand lobby, the board of directors broke into loud applause. Caroline clapped the hardest, flashing a polished smile in hopes of catching the billionaire's attention. Alexander ignored them all. He did not wave. He did not nod. He simply walked through the crowd with cold efficiency. They guided him into the executive elevator and pressed the button for the 50th floor. The ride upward was tense. Winston and Harrison filled the silence with nervous chatter. They bragged about their real estate portfolio, their expansion plans, and their supposed market brilliance. Alexander remained silent the entire time. He stared ahead, watching the floor numbers rise while the weight of his silence slowly crushed their confidence. The quieter he remained, the more desperate their talking became, revealing just how vulnerable they truly were. The elevator doors opened onto the crown jewel of their empire. The 50th floor conference room was enclosed in glass, offering a sweeping panoramic view of the Manhattan skyline. A massive obsidian table dominated the center of the room. Alexander did not wait for permission. He walked past the guest chairs and moved directly to the head of the table, Winston's traditional seat of authority. He pulled back the heavy leather chair and sat down without hesitation, immediately taking control of the room. Winston did not object. Instead, he quickly sat at Alexander's right, while Harrison took the seat on the left. They were more than willing to sacrifice their pride if it meant protecting their fortune. Winston reached into his tailored jacket and removed a thick, leather-bound folder. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it. Inside were the restructuring contracts, the legal documents that would finalize the $300 million debt acquisition and inject desperately needed capital into the company. He slid the folder across the glass table toward Alexander. Then he carefully placed a solid gold Montblanc fountain pen beside the signature line. "Everything has been fully prepared," Winston said, his tone dripping with desperation. "The board has already approved all your conditions. Once you sign these documents, our partnership will officially begin. We are ready to make you billions. We simply need your authorization to start this exciting new chapter." The room became silent. Harrison leaned forward, staring intensely at the golden pen. Salvation felt inches away. Alexander looked down at the contracts. Then he slowly raised his head and locked eyes with Winston. He never touched the pen. Instead, he placed both hands on the table and calmly pushed the folder back across the glass toward Winston. "I am not the chief executive officer of the fund," Alexander said coldly. "I only serve as chairman of the board. I do not oversee day-to-day acquisitions. The person with final executive authority, the only individual capable of approving the funds that could save your company, is walking into this room right now." The heavy oak doors swung open with a sharp echo that made several board members jump. Measured footsteps cut through the silence. The distinct click of Christian Louboutin heels echoed against the marble floor. I walked into the conference room not as a submissive wife, but as the most powerful person in the room. A midnight blue Tom Ford suit framed my posture like armor. The white silk blouse beneath it contrasted sharply against the dark fabric, while the red soles of my heels stood out with every deliberate step. My head remained high. The purple bruise on my cheekbone was fully visible for everyone to see. I made no attempt to hide the violence my husband inflicted the night before. I wore it openly, proof that his attempt to break me had failed completely. I walked past the stunned executives and stopped beside Alexander at the head of the obsidian table. Resting one hand casually on the back of his chair, I established my place beside him without saying a word. Winston stared at me as though reality itself had shattered in front of him. Sweat rolled down his temple as his eyes moved from my expensive suit to my calm posture, then to Alexander, who remained completely unbothered by my presence. His mind could not process the sight of the daughter-in-law he had humiliated standing beside the billionaire, holding his company's survival in his hands. Harrison broke the silence first. His face turned red with fury as he shoved back his chair and slammed both fists against the table. "What the hell are you doing here?" he shouted, pointing directly at my bruised face. "How did you even get past lobby security? I told them to throw you out. You have no right to step foot in this building again." He turned toward the doors. "Security," he yelled. "Get in here immediately and remove her from my building. She's unstable. She's trying to sabotage this meeting. Drag her out before she destroys this deal." The board erupted into anxious whispers. Several shareholders looked nervously between Harrison and Alexander, unsure how this personal conflict might affect the rescue deal. Most of them believed Harrison's version of events completely. To them, I was simply an angry ex-wife interrupting a corporate negotiation. They had no idea who I really was. 2 corporate security guards rushed into the room and moved toward me. But they never came close. The 4 private security contractors accompanying Alexander stepped forward instantly, forming a solid wall between me and the guards. In perfect synchronization, they reached beneath their jackets and activated heavy-duty stun guns. The sharp crackle of electricity filled the boardroom. The corporate guards froze immediately, raising their hands and backing away. Silence swept through the room once again. Harrison stood motionless, staring in disbelief as the billionaire investor's personal security team protected me. "Chairman, I'm incredibly sorry for this disruption," Harrison stammered desperately. "This woman is unstable. She's my arranged wife and she's having a breakdown. Please allow security to remove her so we can continue our business discussion. She has absolutely nothing to do with this company or this investment." Alexander did not react. With deliberate calmness, he unbuttoned his Armani jacket and reached toward a thick stack of legal files his security chief had placed on the table. These were not bailout contracts. They were finalized foreclosure documents prepared by my legal team the previous night. Alexander lifted the stack and slammed it down against the glass table with explosive force. "You arrogant little boy," he thundered. "You called security to remove my biological daughter? You threatened the chief executive officer of my entire private equity firm?" The room gasped in shock. Alexander turned toward Winston, whose hands now trembled violently against the armrests of his chair. "Tell me, Winston," Alexander said coldly, "do you still believe my money is too dirty for your bank accounts? 5 years ago, you treated me like garbage in your own home. You called me an uneducated mechanic who didn't belong near your family. Are my hands still too dirty to sign your salvation checks today?" The blood drained from Winston's face. The memories collided violently in his mind. The mechanic in worn boots and faded flannel, merging with the billionaire sitting before him in an Armani suit and platinum watch. The truth finally shattered his arrogance. The man he mocked was one of Wall Street's most powerful private equity figures, and the daughter-in-law they had abused was heir to a multi-billion-dollar empire. Harrison collapsed into his chair, his eyes locked onto the bruise on my cheek. The bruise he himself had caused less than 12 hours earlier. For the first time, he understood exactly what he had done. He hadn't struck a powerless wife. He had assaulted one of the most powerful corporate figures in the city. The quiet, obedient woman he thought he controlled no longer existed. I stood confidently in my midnight blue suit while the board members stared at me in fear. They looked at my calm expression and instantly realized their company was already finished. I was not there seeking a divorce settlement. I was there to end their empire. From your panicked lenders. We now own every outstanding loan connected to your company. We are your only and complete creditor. And because your company is currently in severe and unrecoverable violation of those loan agreements, I am officially accelerating the debt. I am foreclosing on this entire corporate property. I am seizing your commercial assets, and I am immediately taking possession of the suburban mansion where you and your arrogant family currently live. The weight of my statement hit Harrison like a crushing blow. The entitled vice president, who had spent his life intimidating people beneath him, completely fell apart. The realization that he was suddenly penniless destroyed his false confidence instantly. He had no luxury cars left, no trust fund to depend on. He did not even have a place to sleep that night. The sudden fall into total poverty shattered his fragile ego. Harrison let out a broken sob. He dropped to his knees on the cold marble floor, giving up the last bit of dignity he had left. He crawled around the edge of the large glass table, dragging his expensive tailored pants across the floor. When he reached me, he wrapped his arms desperately around my legs, pressing his tear-covered face against my knees. "Stella, please," he cried, his voice trembling through the silent boardroom. "Please don't do this to me. I'm so sorry. I was wrong about everything. You have to understand the pressure I was under. The financial stress destroyed my mind. That's why I hit you last night. I swear I never wanted to hurt you. I was terrified of losing the company, and I lost control. I love you, Stella. I always have. Please, just give me one more chance to be the husband you deserve. Don't leave me with nothing. I looked down at the pathetic man clinging to my legs. This was the same man who slapped me across the face only 12 hours earlier. The same man who stood in the lobby that morning beside his mistress, laughing about how I would end up homeless. He was not apologizing because he felt remorse. He was apologizing because the doors to wealth and power had just slammed shut on him. He was trying to use fake love and emotional manipulation to save himself. A deep wave of disgust rose inside me. "Take your hands off me," I said coldly. I stepped back forcefully, knocking his arms away from my legs. Harrison fell onto the polished marble floor and stared up at me with terrified eyes. His shaking hands rose in a weak attempt to protect himself, as if his sobbing could somehow change my mind. Alexander stood quietly in the background, watching the scene with a proud, calm expression as he recognized the strength of his daughter. I did not hesitate. I planted my heels firmly on the ground, pulled my arm back, and swung forward with all the anger and strength I had carried for years. My open hand struck Harrison's face with a sharp crack that echoed across the boardroom. The force snapped his head to the side, sending tears across the glass table. Harrison collapsed fully onto the floor, clutching his burning red cheek in shock. A stunned gasp moved through the board of directors, but no one stepped forward to help him. They simply watched as the arrogant heir finally received the same cruelty he had given to others. I stood over him, breathing steadily as adrenaline rushed through my body. My hands stung from the impact, but the relief I felt was impossible to describe. I had finally reclaimed my dignity. "That was for the anniversary night," I said calmly, my voice filled with authority. "You will never touch me again. You will never speak to me again." I turned away from his bleeding face and looked toward Winston and the rest of his ruined family. "From this moment forward, you have exactly 24 hours to pack whatever personal belongings you can carry and leave my property. If you are still inside my buildings tomorrow morning, my security team will remove you by force." Private security escorted Winston and Harrison out of the conference room and guided them toward the executive elevators. The ride down was silent, buried beneath the crushing weight of total defeat. When the silver elevator doors finally opened, the reality of their destruction spread across the lobby. The red velvet carpet still covered the imported Italian marble floor, but now it looked like a path leading straight toward disaster. Caroline stood near the reception desk waiting anxiously. She saw her father stumble out of the elevator like an empty shell. She saw her brother holding his swollen cheek, his designer suit wrinkled and ruined. Instead of concern, rage filled her face. She stormed across the marble floor, her expensive heels striking sharply with every step. "What did you do to them?" Caroline screamed, pointing a manicured finger inches from my face. "You insane gold digger! You think you can destroy my family? Turn my accounts back on right now. You're gonna pay for this, Stella. My father's lawyers will lock you away for the rest of your life." I did not react. I stood calmly in my midnight blue suit while she embarrassed herself in front of the remaining board members and frightened staff. Her complete disconnect from reality was almost unbelievable. Before I could respond, the revolving glass doors spun open. The sounds of busy Manhattan streets entered the lobby alongside Donovan. He was no longer wearing green surgical scrubs. Instead, he wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that carried authority and confidence. Beside him stood a stern, silver-haired man carrying a thick leather briefcase. Anyone familiar with legal circles would recognize him immediately as one of New York's toughest family law attorneys. Caroline spun around, hope suddenly filling her face. She rushed toward her husband, completely misunderstanding the cold expression he carried. "Donovan, thank God you're here," she cried, grabbing his sleeve. "This woman is trying to steal my father's company. Call your bank and transfer money immediately. I need my credit cards working again so I can hire a real legal team. Stop standing there and do something." Donovan did not comfort her. He did not reach for his phone to rescue a family that had spent years disrespecting him. Instead, he looked at Caroline with the detached focus of a surgeon studying a fatal disease. Then he nodded toward the attorney beside him. The lawyer opened his briefcase with a sharp click and removed a thick stack of legal documents inside a blue folder. He stepped forward and pressed them firmly into Caroline's hands before they could fall to the marble floor. "You have officially been served," Donovan said, his voice echoing clearly through the silent lobby. "I am done acting as the personal bank account for a family of arrogant parasites. For years, you and your brother mocked where I came from. You smiled for cameras to appear progressive, but behind closed doors, you treated a board-certified surgeon like he was beneath you because of the color of his skin. You emptied my accounts to buy luxury handbags after your trust fund disappeared years ago." Caroline stared down at the blue folder, panic spreading across her face. "Donovan, what is this?" she whispered. "It is your permanent removal from my life," Donovan replied coldly. "As of 8 this morning, my legal team secured an emergency financial restraining order. Every joint account is frozen. You no longer have access to my income. Those titanium credit cards you love so much are now useless." Caroline began hyperventilating. The reality of becoming financially ruined triggered a very public panic attack. She looked desperately toward Winston and Harrison, but they were already destroyed themselves. But Donovan was not finished. He stepped closer, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I have officially filed for full legal and physical custody of our son. You have no independent income. You are connected to an active federal financial fraud investigation tied to your father's company. You have neither the financial stability nor the moral character to raise a child. You treat everyone, including your own son, like an accessory to improve your social image. I will never allow you to poison his future the way this family poisoned yours." The force of his words shattered Caroline completely. The spoiled daughter of the real estate empire broke apart emotionally. She let out a piercing scream that echoed through the lobby. Her legs gave out beneath her designer dress, and she collapsed onto the marble floor while divorce papers scattered around her shaking body. She sobbed uncontrollably, begging Donovan not to take away her child or her money. For the first time, she understood the truth. She had nothing left. No wealth, no status, no husband, no son. She was bankrupt in every part of her life. Donovan never looked down at her. He calmly buttoned his suit jacket, unaffected by her crying. Then he turned toward me. We locked eyes across the lobby. We were two survivors who had endured years of psychological abuse from a family convinced they were untouchable. Donovan gave me a slow nod of deep respect. It was a silent acknowledgement between two people who had successfully ended a toxic empire. I returned the nod. Without another glance at Caroline, Donovan walked out through the heavy glass doors into the Manhattan night, leaving the ruins of that family behind forever. The weeks following the confrontation moved quickly. I did not just destroy their real estate empire financially. I handed federal authorities the evidence needed to bury them legally as well. Less than 48 hours after I seized their debt portfolio, federal agents flooded the corporate headquarters. Dark SUVs surrounded the building, while agents stormed the 50th floor conference room, confiscating servers, filing cabinets, and personal computers. Winston was escorted out of his own building in handcuffs, his expensive suit wrinkled, and his face pale with fear. The powerful leader of Manhattan real estate was formally charged with 32 counts of financial fraud, wire fraud, and tax evasion. Using the detailed reports I had secretly compiled over 5 years, prosecutors offered no plea deals and no reduced sentences. The evidence was overwhelming: fake documents, ghost properties, and illegal offshore accounts. The judge denied Winston bail. He now faced a mandatory 15-year federal prison sentence, stripped entirely of his fortune, reputation, and social power. The man who once ruled elite country clubs would spend his final years inside a concrete prison cell. His legacy became a warning taught in corporate ethics courses. Harrison's downfall was different. His destruction was personal, humiliating, and fast. The same night he was removed from my building, he rented a cheap hotel room using the last cash left in his wallet. He still believed his mistress Vanessa would stay beside him. He assumed charm alone could replace wealth. He was wrong. Women attracted to stolen corporate credit cards and expensive Cartier jewelry do not remain loyal when the money disappears. The moment Vanessa saw his frozen accounts, She packed her designer bags and left without emotion or explanation. She even pawned the jewelry he had bought her before vanishing completely. Harrison sat alone in a cheap hotel room. His entire identity had been built on money, tailored suits, and purchased affection. Without wealth or his famous last name, he was nothing more than an arrogant man with no useful skills and a toxic reputation. The fall from luxury penthouse living to poverty destroyed what remained of his ego. Within a month, Harrison moved into a filthy motel on the outskirts of the city. He survived on canned food and slept on a mattress that smelled of smoke and decay. No respectable financial company would hire him. The industry had blacklisted him completely. The former golden boy of commercial real estate ended up working in a crowded call center for 10 exhausting hours a day. He wore a cheap polyester shirt and a plastic headset while reading robotic sales scripts from a glowing monitor. Every day, he cold-called exhausted working families, desperately trying to sell low-level life insurance policies for terrible wages. Whenever customers angrily hung up on him, he was reminded of the power and privilege he once had and wasted. His manager, a man 10 years younger, constantly criticized him for failing to meet quotas. He had become invisible to the same elite society that once worshipped him. But the final blow came one cold Tuesday morning. During his lunch break, Harrison rode a crowded bus back to his old neighborhood. He walked the final blocks toward the massive mansion we once shared, the house he once treated like proof of his success. But the mansion was gone. The entire property had become a construction site. Steel barricades surrounded the land. I had seized the deed through debt acquisition, and I had no intention of keeping a house poisoned by toxic memories. I ordered the entire estate demolished. Harrison stood frozen on the sidewalk as giant excavators smashed through the front columns of the mansion. Windows exploded into pieces. The roof collapsed with a thunderous crash while clouds of dust filled the sky. Attached to the fence was a large architectural rendering. It displayed a modern community center. The sign announced that the property was being transformed into a fully funded educational foundation for low-income working-class students seeking higher education. It was a direct rejection of the classism his family had proudly represented for decades. The same money that once funded his arrogant lifestyle would now support the exact people he looked down on. Harrison watched the machinery crush marble floors and grand staircases into rubble. The destruction of the mansion reflected the destruction of his own life. A heavy pressure settled in his chest as he stared at the remains of his fake kingdom. For the first time in his life, the fog of narcissism finally disappeared. He realized he had not simply lost a wife. For 5 years, he had held something rare and priceless in his hands, a loyal and brilliant woman capable of conquering the world beside him. But his arrogance and desperate need for superiority caused him to throw it all away. Now the woman he underestimated was thriving, while he was left completely alone with the ruins of his own choices. 6 months passed after the collapse of my former life. The chaos of that disastrous anniversary gala felt like a distant memory from another lifetime. Tonight, my Tribeca penthouse felt peaceful and calm. Soft jazz music drifted through the elegant space beneath warm, golden lighting. Massive floor-to-ceiling windows framed the glowing Manhattan skyline, turning the city into a beautiful backdrop. I was no longer the quiet analyst hiding behind plain sweaters, and I was no longer wearing the armor of a ruthless corporate strategist either. I wore a simple emerald green silk dress, while my bare feet rested comfortably against a soft Persian rug. The bruise Harrison left on my cheek had disappeared completely, replaced by healed skin and an even more healed spirit. The war inside me was finally over. I had won. The private elevator chimed softly. The doors opened to reveal the only 2 dinner guests I invited that evening. My father, Alexander, stepped inside carrying an expensive bottle of vintage wine. He had traded his old work boots for polished Italian loafers and a tailored blazer, though he still refused to wear a tie. His sharp Wall Street eyes softened the moment he saw me. Beside him stood Donovan, holding the hand of his young son. Donovan looked transformed. The exhaustion that once followed him through toxic family dinners was completely gone. He carried the calm confidence of a surgeon who had finally removed something poisonous from his life. "Welcome home," I said warmly, embracing them both. I knelt down to greet Donovan's energetic son, who immediately ran off to explore the living room safely and happily, unaware of the toxic environment he had escaped. Donovan handed me his coat with a relaxed smile. "I can't thank you enough for tonight, Stella," he said sincerely. "And thank you for recommending my legal team. The divorce was finalized last week. I received full custody. Caroline didn't even show up for the final hearing. Apparently, she's too busy working double shifts at a rundown diner in Queens, trying to pay off legal fees." I guided them toward the dining table. It was not a table designed to impress or intimidate. There were no arrogant family leaders demanding obedience and no insecure relatives judging the value of the silverware. There was only good food, exceptional wine, and the company of people who genuinely respected each other. We spent the evening sharing stories that had nothing to do with corporate takeovers or broken egos. My father laughed loudly while Donovan described a chaotic hospital shift. Alexander admired the intelligence and dedication required to save lives. There was no judgment, no hidden bigotry disguised as polite conversation. Alexander respected Donovan as a fellow self-made man who built his success through real talent instead of inherited fraud. We also discussed the educational foundation I had launched. Construction was already underway on the land where Harrison's mansion once stood. Donovan smiled at the poetic justice of it all, knowing his son would grow up seeing that foundation succeed. As dinner came to an end, Alexander stood and raised his wine glass into the warm light. He looked at Donovan, then at the young boy playing near the sofa, and finally at me. "To the strongest and most brilliant woman I know," my father said emotionally. "For years I watched you shrink yourself to fit into a world that never deserved you. But you didn't just escape that cage, Stella. You tore it apart and built something stronger from the ruins. To independence, to self-respect, and to the family we choose." "To the family we choose," Donovan repeated, gently raising his glass against mine. I took a slow sip of wine. For the first time in years, the crushing burden of pretending and enduring emotional abuse had disappeared completely. I excused myself briefly and stepped onto the private balcony. The cold evening wind moved through my hair, refreshing against my skin. I rested my hands against the smooth glass railing and looked down at the endless flow of Manhattan traffic below. Millions of people moved through the city, fighting their own battles and escaping their own invisible cages. I touched the rim of my wineglass lightly and smiled peacefully. I no longer had to hide behind false humility. I no longer had to tolerate the cruelty of people who treated my existence like a charity project. True family is not a prison built on obligation or marriage certificates. Family is a safe place that respects your boundaries, protects your peace, and values who you truly are. I had destroyed the fake empire that tried to bury me. I had reclaimed my legacy, and I had taken back my freedom with my own hands. Cut to black. The story we explored carries a powerful lesson about self-worth and the real meaning of family. For years, the main character hid her intelligence and minimized herself just to satisfy a husband and relatives driven by arrogance and classism. Many people make the same mistake in real life. We dim our light to protect insecure people around us. We tolerate disrespect, manipulation, and even abuse because we believe marriage or blood ties require endless sacrifice. This journey completely destroys that illusion. Her greatest victory did not come from money or revenge. Her true victory came from realizing that her dignity was never negotiable. The most important lesson is simple. Legal documents and shared last names do not give anyone permission to treat you like a disposable object. A real family is not a cage filled with judgment and humiliation. A real family is made of people who respect your boundaries, protect your peace, and celebrate who you truly are without conditions. She proved that the ultimate response to narcissistic people is reclaiming your power and building a successful life without them. You never have to remain seated at a table where people only offer disrespect. You always have the power to stand up and build your own. If you have ever walked away from toxic people to protect your peace, share your experience in the comments below and subscribe for more empowering stories.